Greetings, Earthlings! Cosmos the Alien once again invading your screens, this time wanting to discuss Dynamite Entertainment's upcoming Ben 10 comic series. Now, as should be no surprise given the whole alien thing, I'm a rather big Ben 10 fan, and given some of the videos I've done, I'm a bit of a comic nerd. And trust me, these and this are not the last videos on comic books I will be doing. I have a lot more to discuss, trust me. Brain have many thoughts, head full of comic nerdom. But Ben 10 has been a lifelong obsession of mine, and when I heard this announcement, I was very excited, as was a lot of the Ben 10 fan base. The reboot had been over, and, well, a lot of people were very excited by the prospect of an ongoing comic series, especially by a publisher like Dynamite, who had published a lot of comic series that were popular. Whether or not you liked them was a whole nother matter, but they were popular. So, grab a smoothie, or shake in this case, and let's talk about it. I'm actually gonna yeet this out of the way so that it's not in the frame and getting in the way. But grab yourself a snack. I won't supply them. It is all virtual after all, but the gesture's still nice, right? So, Dynamite Entertainment, they're the publisher behind a lot of different comic books, but the one they're probably the best known for is The Boys, the source of many memes. Many memes. A lot of people don't like the comic book, but it was popular enough to get its own movie TV series on, I believe it was Amazon Prime. And so a lot of people were excited, it's a pretty big publisher. It's not one of the big two, but it's a pretty big publisher, and they made a pretty big deal out of this comic. And it was announced, and people were already liking the comic based on, I believe it was the Powerpuff Girls that they were putting out. So, pretty good stuff. But the reason I wanted to discuss this was because alongside the Ben 10 comic, they had announced a Captain Planet comic, and I've never watched that series. I had heard of it, I started reading it, and darned, I've been enjoying it. It's a very very fun comic. It's very well done, the art's great, there's a ton of great covers. The covers are what got me to want to read it. They redesigned the character, which is a very important point that it's going to come back later, while staying true to, the original design. And it kind of was interesting because it made me a fan of a cartoon from the 80s that I didn't grow up with. At all. And you would think that this is the sort of, comic series that would only appeal to people nostalgic for the original property, but I looked at it and it just looked interesting to me, started reading it, and now 3 issues in, I'm a bit of a fan, and I hope it continues to be as good as it's been. It's cheesy, it's stupid, but it's really well executed. It executes its premise excellently. So the biggest debate I've seen amongst a lot of fans is, should it continue an existing continuity, the original series continuity or the reboot continuity, or should it do its own thing? The Captain Planet comic, which was, again, it was announced alongside the Ben 10 comic series, it is a completely new take. It reinvents the characters, reinvents the mythos, but clearly does come from a place of love. It's not poking fun at anything. It's not poking fun at, oh man, look how dumb this character design is, look how dumb these character names are. It just embraces everything, and it has fun, and it's incredibly entertaining, and it has incredibly well-written characters, and I'm engaged in the world building. How accurate is it to the original? I have no idea, but I'm engaged. And I feel like similarly, the Ben 10 comic series should go for a new take, because that's how you'll get new fans who might have heard of Ben 10, might have heard, oh, it was made by, Man of Action, who are all comic creators, and they might want to check this out. Oh, it's a new take. It's not connected to existing continuity, so I can just pick this up, start reading. Or maybe they'll see the trade paperback, and they'll, when it's gotten on long enough to have a trade paperback, and they might want to start reading then. And they can read knowing, okay, it's not connected to anything, so I won't have to go watch, 100 plus episodes of TV. Because even if you tell someone you don't need to know everything, people are still gonna worry about continuity. Because like with Marvel Comics, everything's canon. Everything is canon. There are like a couple exceptions where they've explicitly made stuff non-canon, but they have never had a reboot where stuff has been thrown out of canon. So everything they've ever published that takes place in their main universe to this day remains canon. Was it a tie-in with a toy? Like US1, that remains canon. ROM Space Knight, that's still canon. Like all these toy tie-in comics, they're canon to this day, even if they seldom are reprinted. Like ROM Space Knight and Micronauts being reprinted, big deal. They are canon, but them being reprinted was out of the question for years because they were toy tie-ins. Fortnite comics, reprinted. I mean, they'll probably never be reprinted years from now, but they are 100% canon to the main universe. DC, they've done reboots, but nowadays their policy is anything can be canon. Anything goes, basically. Just assume that, like, the past 10-ish years happened, and if all else fails, for, like, characters like Superman, post-Crisis applies with a mixture of New 52, Rebirth, like, mix a little bit of everything. And now they're doing something that kind of mixes a little bit of everything, too. It kind of tells you, okay, yeah, basically, here's our mesh pot. Stuff all the way back from the 1940s, 30s and 40s, is referenced in their official universe timeline. And you don't have to read all those comics to have fun with a new story. They have plenty of jumping on points. And the crazy thing is, you're not going to understand everything, but a good story is going to build on what came before, but not be completely inaccessible to the new reader. So, but that's a entire tangent. But I really need to digress here. I need to have a tangent alarm. Maybe I could style it after the Tangent Comics logo for all 5 of you that have read Tangent Comics. But even when you tell people, oh, you don't need to know everything to understand this. You don't need to have seen the original Ben 10 series to like Alien Force or Ultimate Alien or Omniverse, because like you can still have fun with it. Yeah, it'll reference stuff. Yeah, you'll be a little out of the loop, but it's still fun. Or yeah, you don't need to have read 50, 70, nearly 100 years of comics, but you can still have fun with the modern stuff because they have good jumping on points. Or they should. DC and Marvel try to. Or, oh hey, you can just seek out good self-contained stuff from indies. Indies are always good, too. Go read, such and such. Just find a character you like. Read their best stories. Sometimes just reading those is good. People will still worry about continuity, so a new take can be best for that. Plus, they can appeal to kind of everyone. People who are fans of the original series, they can find ways of appealing to them. People who are fans of Alien Force and or Ultimate Alien, they can find ways of appealing to them. People who are fans of Omniverse, they can find ways of appealing to them. People who are fans of the reboot, they can find, all 3 of them, they can find ways of appealing to that fan base too. My personal wish list would be that they, bring back the iconic, Alien Force design, like elements of that at least, the green jacket, because like that's kind of like, that was when the series was at its peak popularity, and to me, and I would argue most people, that is the definitive Ben 10 design. But I think kind of akin to both the Captain Planet comic and the fan comic, Ben 10 Danny Phantom 5 Years Later, I think that's the full title. If it's just 5 years later, that's... I'm sorry, I like unnecessarily long titles, so that's what I think of it in my head. But that comic, similarly, like, I think their redesign of Ben is really good because it's very reminiscent of the Omniverse design, the Omniverse hoodie, but it's also very reminiscent of the original series design, and yet it's doing its own thing. And then the Captain Planet redesign, again, it's very reminiscent of the original, original design, but it's not an 80s crop top. It's doing its own thing. It's very reminiscent of what came before, but it's modernized, or it's its own thing. And I think that should be the mentality they go with. And I think, like, in terms of an alien lineup, you could go with, grabbing aliens from all different eras. You could grab Heat Blast and Humongousaur and Topic, and you could grab Gax. I don't know. I don't remember a lot of original aliens from the reboot, to be quite frank. But you could grab a lot from everywhere and just kind of go ham with, the concepts you borrow in favor of telling your story. Don't, because then you're not chained to continuity. Instead, you're broken away from those shackles, and your hands drift. They don't drift anymore. And instead, the story can just be told in whatever way you want it to be told, and you build up a new continuity. Heck, for me, I feel like between how we had the original series, Ultimate Alien, Omniverse, the reboot, I think we don't need kind of kid Ben, 10/11-year-old Ben anymore. I'd love if they returned us to having, teenage Ben. That's why I think we should have, the jacket look again. It's why I think if they go back to telling the origin story, why not have it be that he gets the Omnitrix at that age? And then you kind of get the best of both worlds. Him being inexperienced, but he can also have that more mature personality that a lot of Alien Force and Ultimate Alien fans like. So you can get, him getting the wrong alien, or him not knowing what an alien does, or what, there being mysteries behind the Omnitrix and its creation and whatnot. But then also there being more serious character development. There being also him developing into a leader, him being generally more mature. Though I'd also love to see them make completely original aliens. I know a lot of people talk about, I want to see this character. I've seen a lot of discussion online about, which aliens from previous series should show up. But I think the medium of comics provides a really wonderful opportunity to, again, like if a new take broke away from the shackles of continuity, they'd break away from animation budgets. They're free to do whatever they want. They don't have to be restricted by what can be depicted via animation and what can be made into a toy. Because in the show, everything was made to be a toy, and everything had to be depicted via animation. So, as a result, everything had to be designed with that in mind. Okay, everything needs to be marketable to a certain extent, and everything needs to be made posable, everything needs to be not as much of a pain for the animators, hopefully, and if it is, that alien's probably not going to show up as much. So that's where, and honestly, I think that's why the original series, which had a lot of more grotesque, designs and whatnot, I think that's why the art style immediately shifted with Alien Force Onward to be a little more streamlined, a little more kind of kid-friendly, despite the grotesqueness in the original series not really being anything too out there. I don't think it was PG-13. It just kind of emphasized the body horror without really feeling creepy or going PG-13. Like, it was still very G-rated. It just did so in a very comic booky way. And actually, that would be the other thing, is I'd be interested in seeing what they could do now that they're a comic book. It's not a TV show necessarily aimed at kids. They could probably, instead of being G-rated, they could probably go PG or PG-13. Relatively speaking, they could probably, deal with certain themes that in a more overt manner. They can probably, because there were some episodes of the original series that got pretty dark, but I'd like to see them go further, or heck, go further, in ways with ideas that got shut down by the network for one reason or another. I'd be really curious to see what they do if they were able to go a little darker. But that's not necessarily something I like to, that's not like a make or break thing. But basically, to conclude, I'd love to see, with this comic, them do something new and them really kind of push the boundaries. I'd love this take to be so different compared to what came before, that in the same way the reboot, instead of being talked about as a new incarnation of the original, it's talked about as a separate series nowadays. Like, in its first season, it was talked about in comparison to the original, but nowadays, because it has elements of every series that came before, it is talked about as if it was a sequel, because it is its own incarnation of the series, of the franchise, even if it is in its own continuity. I'd like it to be so original and so kind of out there in terms of how it tells its stories and how it builds its world, that fans discuss it as its own incarnation of the franchise, of the world, of the characters and whatnot. And I'm really excited to see like who they get to be the writer and artist team for this, and who's going to be in charge of this and how they execute things. And I'm really excited, especially because I know that not every title published by a publisher is going to be of the same quality, but I do know that, generally speaking, the titles, generally, publishers do try to have a very unified vibe across the board. And, I don't know, given they were announced alongside each other, that Captain Planet title gave me a lot of hope for that Ben 10 title. But that's enough from me. This is Cosmos the Alien, blasting off.